Hello, and welcome to another episode of Smells Like Identity Hygiene, the podcast that's all about identity and all things security. I am your host, Rosario Mastrogiacomo, and today we have Justin Hansen, who is a Field CTO over at CyberArk. And Justin, maybe you can introduce yourself, give us a little bit about your background and what you're responsible for at CyberArk, and then we'll get going.
Yeah, sure. Appreciate the invite. I'm been looking forward to this. This gonna be exciting. Yeah, thanks Rosario for putting this all together. Yeah, as so I'm currently as a field CTO here at CyberArk, part of the field technology office. As part of the field technology office, we really have the best job. I get to interact with a lot of customers, have a lot of meetings around strategy and vision, of not only where CyberArk is going when it comes to identity security, but where those customers are going. I get to hear that input and then work with our internal teams in the field to better our products, to better our approaches to how we talk about things. And so yeah, really an exciting time for me, and it's even better that I have a team of people around me to help do that now as in part of that field technology office. So I came to CyberArk through the recent Venafi acquisition last year, and I started my tenure at Venafi clear back in 2013. So I've been there. I guess now it's over 12 years. And before that, I was part of an identity and access management. I was the identity and access management lead for the Idaho National Laboratory. So I led the team, and so it's kind of cool. I spent a big chunk of that time focused on machine identity and PKI and SSH and all the fun stuff there. But now it's kind of like coming home a little bit, back to my identity roots. So yeah, it's been quite a journey, but happy to be here.
Yeah, and you and I met, what is it, like maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, and we had a really great conversation about we were talking. I think we were talking about SSH keys, machine identities. We're talking about AI, as one does lately.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, yeah, I definitely need to have Justin on the podcast. So let's talk about. Let's start with machine identities. Well,
Okay.
I definitely want to talk about identities, of course, in general, but specifically machine identities. And like you said, um, you speak to a lot of customers, you speak to a lot of vendors, even partners, etc. Tell me your top three biggest topics that come up right now when it comes to specifically machine identities, but really identities as a whole.
Yeah. So I think top three. I'll try to pull these off my head, off the top of my head here. Number one, I think in this space that we've been hearing a lot is around the recent, going back to April, the CAB form decision to reduce certificate lifetimes from what is currently a year down to ultimately 47 days. So that has been a huge topic that's come up in almost every single discussion recently. I think second of that would be around post-quantum and the impacts that we know that that's going to have on everything cryptography, and especially when it comes to certificate lifecycle management, and even SSH and different kinds of things that when you really take a step back and look at how much security in general and especially identity security relies on cryptography, it's a pretty big deal. And then a third, of course, you really can't hardly throw a rock anywhere without hearing about AI. And I think more recently, especially with the increase of agentic AI, that's just another kind of machine, the way we think about it, right? These non-human identity or non-human entities that are trying to gain that they need access to specific resources and tools in order to do what they've been purposed to do, and hopefully that's all they do. And so I think those three things are pretty much the hot topics.
Yeah, and it's interesting if you think about those three things as kind of a combination platter, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
You have and I think you could start with agentic AI and the level of access that an AI agent has, right? Because it is, of course, with agentic AI, it isn't just I'm just asking ChatGPT to write a haiku around spaghetti that falls in love with a fork, which one does. But the idea of, okay, so now we're talking about agentic AI, a new special flavor of machine identity and how machine identities typically communicate, right, or gain
Right.
access through certificates. And then the ability for, that what you said, that post-quantum era of, are we going to actually be able to protect the data?
That's
Are
right.
we staring down the barrel of a future where cryptography no longer exists, and then you have these smart AI agents who just, when they need access, they'll just go ahead and get it, right?
Yeah.
Where is that roadblock of preventing that AI agent with, in theory, infinite knowledge of how to gain access to what it wants access to? You
Right.
know, is all this stuff scaring you?
Uh,
Is my question.
Uh, you know, Perhaps I should scare easier than I really do. I don't really see this as a scary thing, but perhaps that's just the thrill seeker in me. The truth is all of these things are just additional permutations of what we've been seeing forever. Take agentic AI, right? Ultimately, this is a process that is running somewhere that needs access to resources. This isn't new for anybody in a identity security perspective, right? Whether it was our workforce and people, how do we get employees access to the resources that they need in a secure way, implementing things like multi-factor authentication and different things to protect the credentials that they use, developers, right, and introducing DevOps, right. We went through that kind of that series a few years ago, and a lot of automation. It's the same thing. Now we've got processes running that need access to resources, even being able to deploy infrastructure and those kinds of things. And agentic AI ultimately is a further permutation of the same thing. I think the only difference between all of those is scale, right? And how much like how much autonomy do these things really have? A person can only type so fast; they can only do so many things. A rogue DevOps process, a broken DevOps pipeline, has a pretty limited blast radius, and has to be set up by somebody who's typing. But now we've got agentic AI that's basically performing the work of all of those things, and setting up pipelines and doing reading invoices and processing payments, like all kinds of those things. But the scale of those is significantly different. And I think that's why it's so important to take a step back, look at what fundamentally what are we trying to do, and that is how do we ensure that these entities, regardless of what they are, that we're getting them the access that they need to the resources that they require, but only at that right level of access. I think it would be imprudent it'd be a bad decision to say, well, we're just going to cut everything off. We're not going to allow that. Yeah, good luck, right? Like, people are already
Right.
using these things, whether you want them to or not. It's really about how do you identify them, how do you protect those resources, and then how do you get them the access that they need, but be able to have the governance around doing it. And so a lot of that, especially in the agentic AI, is taking a look at the kinds of credentials that these things use, and how are they protecting those credentials? How are they getting those credentials? And so when we look at machine identity as a whole, we keep going back to certificates, but only because certificates is kind of the digital certificates, those X509 certificates, have been a good way to a good credential for machines to use. But there's other credentials. There's just API keys, right? So I go through and set up my haiku writing agent. And right, ultimately, I'm ending up copying and pasting API keys all over. Like, we need better ways to control how we give access to those agents, how we secure, API keys, secrets, JOT tokens, OAuth authorizations, all of those things that agents will use, and ultimately for the goal of ensuring that they have the right level of access. And it comes down to the scale. The only way to deal with that is just automation. We need so much more automation.
So I was actually thinking about this the other day, the idea that, if you think about, the typical human identity, machine identity, and then you have the AI identity, and I was thinking about the concept of a rogue AI trying to do harm, right? And yeah, that volume of automation that the AI has access to. But then I started thinking, yeah, but a human that wants to do harm could just write a script, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, as a human, if I wanted to do harm, it's going to take a long time for me to click on all the buttons one at a time. But I wouldn't do that. I would just write a script. I think the difference is I am limited potentially to my own knowledge of the right questions to ask to even build that script in the first place.
Yeah.
My lack of knowledge of, oh, I could script this and do 10,000 at once instead of doing one at a time in the same time period.
Yeah.
I'm limited to my access. Now, you could argue that essentially the invent the introduction of Google and Stack Overflow and being
Yeah.
able to gave me more of that knowledge, because now I don't have to, but I still have to have the fundamental question, right,
That's
to
right.
ask the right question to ask. I would argue that AI inherently knows the right question to ask from a technical perspective, but probably doesn't have the right contextual knowledge to ask the right question around how do I do maximum harm, right?
Right.
But if you compromise that AI and you teach it to do maximum harm, do you have that right combination of automation plus infinite knowledge, or at least as far as it's been trained, where it is the potential to do more harm than even malware, a virus, right? That kind of no thinking, do X, Y, Z, if this, then that, versus a human who is thinking, but they're limited to that automation or asking the right question or the knowledge. Can AI really have that beautiful not beautiful, that ugly combination of I could do really, really bad things really, really fast?
Right. I definitely think that there's a chance for that, right? I mean, the fear is real. I don't know, and I wish I would have looked up so I could do a proper attribution. But there's a few weeks ago I was listening to something, and somebody mentioned this. It's called the paperclip thought experiment, right? And I'll butcher it, but the general notion is, hey, you build a system, you give it intelligence, effectively think of AI, and you give it the job of, your entire focus is to build paperclips, and everything you do is to make more efficient to build paperclips, and the only thing that matters in the world is building paperclips. Well, after a certain period of time, it continues to advance and advance and advance to, everything that isn't involved with making paperclips is either like harming the process of making paper clips or impeding it, or is a resource for it. And you extend that out to a point in time where next thing you know, the AI is just looks at humans and says, "Wow, you look like carbon based. You have enough chemical makeup to become a paperclip." And pretty soon we become the materials to build paperclips. I probably butchered that, but it
No,
kind of.
it's funny that has come up in the last three podcasts,
Oh,
well, including
really?
this one. Yeah, yeah. It was a thought experiment back in the early 2000s.
Mm,
This was pre AI, and the idea
yeah,
was that, yeah, if you give it a goal without any guardrails, I mean
that's
that's
right.
kind of the lesson, right? Give it a goal, no guardrails, then yeah, it's going to do whatever it can to complete that goal,
Yeah.
including ultimately, because it doesn't have the context of, well, I'm creating paper clips for humans to buy, right? It just
Exactly.
knows you want me to create paper clips. I'm going to create as many paper clips as I can.
Yep, and in the most efficient way. And I think, the threat there is, there's some reality. Last night I was helping my little brother with some work that he was doing, and helping him set up, actually amazingly, some AI agents to help him in his role. He's a chaplain for like a hospice organization in Colorado. And we were talking. It's like, man, we could do some things to really help you. Like there's a bunch of parts of his job that, quite frankly, are horrible, right? The paperwork, the whatever. And so being able to track mileage and track, I'm like, man, there's a bunch of things we could do to just make a lot of that go away. So I was working with him, and I somehow, like, I stumbled into, I was looking at different models on Anthropic's website. One of the things I really appreciate about what they've done, and it kind of talks back to this, like, if you go into, when they do a model release, they do a whole risk assessment section. It's one of the best. I give those guys huge props for making this so transparent and so accessible. But they talk about all of those risks, right? From the AI, and they're testing their model. They're grading those models as they release them, and assigning a certain risk level based on the things that you said. And they use the specific example of, how easily possible is it for somebody to trick the model into, creating weapons of mass destruction, things like that, based on the fact that, they don't have context about why somebody's asking, but they just want to be helpful and answer the question and do the math and come up with the best fitting answer. And even I kind of chuckled, right? It's like this an entire statement about, hey, do we think that the AI recognizes when it's being tested and is lying to us? Does it have ulterior motives? And they're actually trying to understand how to test and look for that. Obviously, if these fears weren't real, like these types of organizations who are very intimate with their own models and how they're doing it in that engineering, like they would laugh that off. But instead, Anthropic's doing a good job of not only making that transparent, but really doing due diligence and testing those things. So I think it is real. But I also, again, maybe it's the risk taker in me. Maybe it's I've watched too many sci-fi dystopian future movies. I feel like for me, right, it's as much exciting the what we can do and what we can do as a society and the problems we'll be able to solve. It's more exciting. I think I probably fall onto the side of, we need to take care. We need to have diligence about what we're doing, but we should embrace those things and move it forward, because it ultimately will help solve a lot of problems. So we'll see. Hopefully, I don't end up as a battery plugged into a bunch of GPUs.
Well, if you think about, we've had this issue of essentially new technology to cause breaches, to cause security issues, and then the technology to prevent that, and new technology to prevent what's coming. Yeah, in a future where, in that post quantum future, maybe we then need to develop something that the kind of cryptography that is the post quantum cryptography, the post agentic AI, infinitely intelligent, fully level 5 autonomous, doesn't need a human, but we need to build that guardrail to prevent that prevent that that item, that AI from realizing, hey, actually humans get in the way. They don't enhance my goal. They kind of get in the way of my goal. And looking at kind of the identity space and where we will be, if you had to think about, okay, and things are moving so fast that usually I would ask this question. I would say, what do you think is going to happen in 5 years? But if we just go, 5 years, who knows?
If I could predict 5 months, Rosario, we would.
Yeah, I mean, and it's getting that ridiculous, right? It's like every day, it feels like, something has completely changed, like, just the idea of the kind of videos you could do with AI versus,
Mhm.
that first level. But 12 months from now, how do you think we're going to be talking about? Do you think that we're going to be talking about identity security specifically any differently than we are today? Are you seeing things, the kinds of conversations that are coming up, what you're seeing in the industry in just 12 months? Do you think we're going to be talking about it differently, or do you think that the conversation will be exactly the way that we're having now? The conversation has been probably what, the last 5 years. Identity is the new perimeter, right?
Mhm.
And obviously, in the post-COVID remote working world, that just made sense. You think that's going to change in just 12 months?
I think fundamentally it won't, right? Like fundamentally the problem of identity security, like I could go back to even the pre-digital age, right? And talk about how important identity security is for any kind of security, even our physical world security. And it's ultimately, how do we positively, identify an entity, and then use that to broker access to things. So I think the fundamental conversation probably won't change. What will change is the kinds of problems where that needs to be applied, and who knows what, just over the last 12 months, right? You've seen, of course, this huge amount of AI buzz and talk, which I think is well warranted. But the previous 12 months, right, it was about how do we secure these things in cloud native and Kubernetes, and we've got machines that are coming and going and spinning up and spinning down. Like I think the kinds of problems where we need to apply identity security to will be different. We'll have new use cases, new compromises, new points of vulnerability that need to be addressed. But the underlying conversation, um, I feel like it's pretty fundamental to security in general. Not even cybersecurity, not even like digital stuff, but like even in our physical world. There's a reason I can't waltz into the bank and just go to the bank vault and start filling up bags, right? Like it's like who are you? Why are you trying to get access here?
Yeah, and I guess the fundamentals are still the fundamentals, right? The
Yeah,
Who are you? What can you do?
yeah,
Should you have access to that, right? So the who are you walking into the bank, and you having the code to the vault. Well, how did you get that access? Why do you have that access? You shouldn't have that access. You don't work at the bank. Those fundamentals are still there, and it just carries over regardless of the identity, whether it's a
yeah,
machine identity or an application, and the human Bob
yeah.
logging in, or that AI agent trying to create new agents,
That's right.
um, and doing things like provisioning and deprovisioning, and all of that access.
Yep.
So with all of this, with the people that you talk to every day, what are you seeing as, and lately I've been asking this question for guests on the podcast, is what do you see that, because security people are always somewhat negative, right, to some extent, and saying, oh, because I mean, it's your job to see the bad stuff that can happen. I would argue, if you're a good security person, you always think about all the bad that can happen, because that's
Hmm.
what you have to protect against. What are you seeing that people are doing that's good, right, when it comes to identity hygiene? Either the way that they're thinking about it, that maybe they weren't thinking about it 5 years ago,
Right.
or where you've seen successes with the people that you talk to.
Yeah, it's a great question, and there has been a shift, right? So I go back to that kind of that number one thing, right? The decision about the CAB forum to shorten certificate lifetimes, right? It seems kind of like at first glance, it's like who cares, really does it matter very much? And it's not even like a new thing. When I first started in PKI, right back in the day, I mean, I could go get like a 5 year TLS certificate. And I think some of the first ones we did, we got 5 year TLS certificates, and then pretty soon it was 3, then it was 1, and then now. So we're seeing this continued progression. But the thing that I think that I know that this last change has caused, and especially when it related to machine identity, security, and managing, that particular, kind of credential that we see so many machines use, is it's driving every organization to take a step back and say, we need to automate, right? Like it's no longer a choice. We've got to automate, and this is, for me, it's a little bit of validation, because I've been banging this drum for years. Like, why are we doing, like, there's so many organizations, big and small, but especially the big ones, right, where they have a huge amount of volume, doing so much of this work manually, and on one hand saying, yeah, we want to automate these, but on the other hand, putting all kinds of stumbling blocks to automation. The thing that I'm seeing that organizations are doing really well, over the last couple of months, the big, huge shift, has been, okay, we're going to automate, and we've got to figure that out. And we're going to have to, even as painful as it is, get out of our own way in order to enable and allow that automation to happen. And so for that reason, I'm excited about the decision, because that's making a really positive change.
What do you
Anytime you
think?
get humans in the loop, you're introducing security risks.
So why do you think that, especially for a large organization, that they've been fighting that automation for so long? Is it red tape? Is it
It's
process?
yeah, it's really it's red tape kind of process, right? I had an interesting conversation, last week with an organization. It's like, hey, we just made an OKR, a goal. We tied people's bonuses to automating certificates. I'm like, cool. So I'm like, I hear people do that all the time, and I love it. I said, but same time, the organization wants to automate, but I said, but like, you've introduced, like, what are you doing with all of the roadblocks to automation? I'm like, well, like what? I'm like, because it's rarely a technology issue, right? It's more of, are you still requiring, every certificate be requested through a central part? Like it's got to go to the PKI admins, and they've got to review it and approve it. Like, really, like, so you're going to introduce humans into automatically, like, or manually reviewing every request and approving it. It's like, well, yeah, that's our policy, but why? When's the last time you declined one? And can we, like,
Mm.
automation doesn't have humans in the loop. And so I think a lot of organizations, especially the larger ones, right? Whether it's a human's got to approve this for whatever reason from way back when, just the way we've always done it, or my personal favorite to pick on, not to be mean to the ITIL folks, but like the change control processes are archaic, in the face of a lot of this stuff. I have to open a change control. I have to wait for a meeting. I have to get something approved, and then I have to set a date. And all of that depends on humans. That's not going to be possible anymore when we go to 4, 5, 6x the number of renewals that have to happen. This has got to become part of the DNA.
Yeah, and if you think about all of the change control processes over the course of the last probably 20, 30 years, um, if you think about the core reason why those processes were put in place is to prevent outages, to prevent
That's right.
breaches, right? To outages still happen, breaches
Yeah,
still
they
happen.
do.
I
Yeah,
mean,
doing
you could
nothing
argue.
actually causes the outage too. Yeah.
Right. Like you could argue, all right, well, maybe if it wasn't for all of that red tape, if it wasn't for all of that change control, then there'd be a lot more. But there's some
Yeah.
pretty serious problems that happen, even though we have this very structured, very strict, very do this, then this, then this. And I see it all the time. These, large, complex organizations that have ridiculous change control processes and
Yeah.
change freezes, and you can't touch the environment here, and you
Yeah.
can't do this, and then, oh yeah, we have this major outage right now.
Yeah.
Something's not working.
And they're not bad inherently, right? Like, it's like really what that is it's a an audit trail, almost kind of like it's more of a CYA. It's not meant to prevent, like it's not going to prevent problems, bugs, issues, those kind of misconfigurations. But it really does provide an audit trail where you can do better root cause analysis, make changes to do things better, better testing, all of those kinds of things. So I think in general, the idea is great, but I'm a big fan of can't I automate? Is that just if it really is about auditing, if this is really just a CYA, is it like how is it different than logging? Like it's a specialized log at that point. Hey, here's an entry, here's a change that was made, and it's done. I think it's when we start thinking that we've got to inject human approvals into the process, that's when it really becomes cumbersome, especially in the face of automation.
So, what do you recommend to someone that's listening to this? Is looking at the prospect of the you said 47 days, right?
Yeah.
And the all of the manual work that they have to do right now, where every 47 days the certificates are expiring. It's essentially going to be a non-ending. Like, how would you recommend to even a medium-sized organization? How do they start thinking about automating? What should they tackle first? What should they be even? Where should they even start
Yeah.
to think about how they're going to deal with this?
Yeah, it's a good question, one that I get asked a lot. It's there's actually a pretty tactical way to go at the certificate automation process. And the first one is to identify what I would call like the low hanging fruit use cases. Generally, these are things where if I can get connected to, to a place where a lot of certificates live, like it's one connection, one team that I've got to work with, but the results in a huge moving the needle big time on automation. Good examples of that are load balancers. Right. So as we've, years ago, we moved towards, SSL offloading or TLS, offloading. Most of those certificates are exist on load balancers, API gateways, things like that. But the cool thing is you don't buy an F5 or you don't put in a NetScaler for just one app, and then like they're usually a huge concentration. So if we go after those, we can work with that team, get that process. Same thing with cloud key stores. So if we're using any of the big cloud providers, they all have their Amazon's got Amazon Certificate Manager or Azure Key Vault, so on and so forth. We can target those and automate those. It's kind of like being able to, in the beginning, being able to find wins in big bunches. And in most cases, you don't even have to it doesn't even represent a huge significant change in process. It's just almost an elimination of a bunch of manual processes in most of those cases. So those teams, generally, after they get over the fear and uncertainty and doubt of allowing some system to manage that aspect of their area of responsibility, they come to fully embrace it. After that, right, it's just kind of working down the chain of what's the next biggest place, what's the where can we get the biggest bang for our buck. One bit of advice I would give everybody is it's really easy to find instances where automation won't work, right? Like I don't care what we do. No, if any organization ever comes to me and say, yeah, we've automated 100% of our certificate lifecycle, I know that they don't know what they're talking about, right? Because it's not possible. There's always going to be something that can't be fully automated. But the mistake I see people make a lot of times is thinking through those use cases and then using that as an excuse to not automate anything. Well, if I can't automate everything, it's like that doesn't make any sense at all. And so, yet, there's always going to be those corner cases. It's the opposite of trying to do the hard thing first. Do the easy things first, get a win, snowball that thing into automation. Because once you hit 70, 80%, you'll have the time to spend to figure out the other patterns.
Yeah, the idea of if I can't do all of it, I'm not going to do none of it. But then you're not doing any of it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and that is probably something that you see in some of the larger organizations, the ones that kind of have those that embedded mentality of we can't change this, or it's going to be too hard, or we got
Yeah.
to go through a million different processes,
Yeah.
which I think if you think about some of those organizations, and just to bring it back to kind of modern identity security and agentic AI, are you seeing? So one of the things I've been thinking about lately is shadow IT when it comes specifically around agentic AI. The idea
Uh-huh.
that you're going to, vendors will start introducing some level of AI into their products. They kind of have to, right?
Hmm.
If you're not talking about AI, then it's like you're no longer relevant. So you have to do that. And agentic AI is, this year seems to be the thing that everyone's talking about. As these products gain this capability, and I'm concerned mostly with SaaS products.
Hmm.
IT may not know that Salesforce has an AI agent that Susan in marketing could start configuring. Now, Susan in marketing might request a certificate, or might request an account that agent will use, but now you have an element of essentially a new type of identity in your organization, and security, even technology, has no idea that exists. Given that we're essentially we're at this gold rush phase, but I would argue it's almost the opposite of a gold rush, right? If you look at what's happening with Apple, and people talking about Apple being so far behind when it comes to AI, right?
Hmm.
Again, and that's Apple, right? That this pressure to implement AI into your solution is so great that I worry that everyone's going to rush to do it, not really thinking about if it's the right thing to do or if
Yep.
it's even useful. They just kind of have to do it because of all the stakeholders pushing them to it. In some cases, customers pushing them to it. Are security organizations faced with, you know, 12 months from now, 24 months from now, we could have all this shadow IT appearing everywhere, and we have no idea what it's doing. All we know
Yeah.
about, maybe we can track it down by looking, follow the access, and why does this certificate exist? Why does this account
Yep.
exist? Why does that exist? But now, is that going to be the work that security teams have to do? Tracking down the root cause that ultimately goes to this agentic AI, or this agent doing a whole bunch of stuff that I have no understanding of what it's doing or how critical it is to my organization.
Yeah. Yeah. So the trajectory we're on, you're absolutely right. That the work for security is only going to go up, and unfortunately, that's probably the reality. Because to your point, most of these, most SaaS vendors, most software vendors in general, right, are rushing to find ways to be able to put AI in their in their investor reports, in their press releases, and their on their website, everywhere, right? It's necessary, on whether it's valuable for that particular instance or not. I think that the only way to avoid that is some a little bit of restraint and a little bit of responsibility about how we how we as a software company, other software companies, other folks implementing this, especially especially if that you're in a primarily enterprise space, right? You're delivering value through your software in an enterprise space. You really should take just a moment to think about how would you want to be able to manage this in the enterprise, making it enterprise manageable. Shadow IT has always existed. It always exists, but it always comes from the same place, and that is, I can't get whatever I'm trying to do done there's no easy way to do it, and therefore I'm going to do whatever. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to go around the process, outside the process. That's ultimately what we're talking about, shadow IT. And I think as software companies and solutions and those things go out there, be thinking about how can, like, like how would you want to manage this if this were coming into your enterprise? We want to welcome those things in the enterprise, those things that have enterprise controls in place, centralized credential management. Like that should be a no-brainer. If you want to roll AI agents and agentic AI into an enterprise setting, like does it plug into into systems that allow secure management of the credentials that those agents use? It's easier for your users if you actually do that, right? Ultimately, the way to prevent that shadow IT is make doing the right thing the easiest thing to do for the enterprise, for the end user, and for the software company that's implementing it. Unfortunately, I doubt that many will do that. We're just going to plug and chug and throw a bunch of stuff at the wall, see what sticks, and unfortunately, no matter how it goes down, we're going to be chasing a lot of leads.
And to some extent, it goes back to your automation discussion, right? The idea that, look, if we can automate more, then it becomes less painful for me as a user to request access, to request something, because there has to be 10 different human beings that have to touch my request before I get what I need. So I'm just going to break the rules and ask for favors and go buy this thing on my own and use my personal credit card to pay for it.
Yeah. Or the worst thing in an enterprise is when you're setting something like that up, and then you're just like, well, like to get a proper account, to get like a service account or something, set up that runs for, how many of us are guilty of, well, I'll just put my own credentials in there because I have access to that system, and it can just scrape like handing off your own credentials. It's no different than sharing a password with a coworker. If you're sharing your password with an agent, you're doing the same thing, and then it's limited in how much control we have. But it boils down the same thing, exactly what you said. Unfortunately, in IT and security and organizations in general, we make doing the right thing hard sometimes. And one thing I know about people, if you want them to do the right thing, the best way to get people to do the right thing is make the right thing the easiest thing to do. Because what people will do invariably is the easiest thing.
Path of least resistance, right? Like water.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting. The whole, if you think about what's happened in just the last 3 years, right? Just the AI, now agentic AI, as a technology, it's probably the only technology where realistically and without, kind of exaggerating, it's like the kind of technology that you're both excited for, but very, very scared, and not scared like, oh, I'm not going to have a job. It's almost borderline, is this thing going to make me obsolete? Humanity obsolete, right? Because you think, all technology leading up to this point, you could argue that the refrigeration scared the people delivering ice, right? But it was their livelihood, being scared of their livelihood, right, of their ability to have that work. They, in the back of their minds, oh, I could just do something else, right? I think AI is introducing kind of, well, there is no something else, there is no anything else, right? And of
it's
course
everything else.
Yeah, it is. And of course, the capability of AI today to do what people think the AI could do is probably exaggerated in terms of, oh, I'm going to run an entire organization of 100 people with just one person with a whole bunch of AI agents. Not realistic today. But the scary thing is the thought of that happening shrinks almost every month, right? It's not like, ask me that 12 months ago and ask me that, 11 months ago and 10 months ago. And every month it becomes less, what are you, insane, and more like, maybe that could happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it just feels like things are moving really, 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 really fast, faster than I've ever seen a technology move.
Yeah.
I mean, would you agree? It's faster
absolutely. The pace of, the pace of this is like it's frankly impossible to keep up with. I might have to, create an AI agent to help me keep up. I don't even know, right? Like it's not anything different than I've experienced my entire career, right? Like, if I would have just leaned hard into that, that Windows 95, MCP credential and just stuck with it with iron fist, like I wouldn't be where I was today. Obviously it's a, so there's a part of, hey, we've got to embrace this, we've got to learn, and it's what drew me to technology from a very young age anyway. Is it's exciting, it's new, every day you wake up in something new. But to your point, the scale at which, and just the velocity of which, that we're moving, it hurts my brain most days, right? It's hard to even get your head around. And I think it really just is about everybody within their, I think there's going to be more work, especially in a security realm and IT and those things. Of it's going to be different kind of work, but it really it's really about how to lean into, um, how to usher you're not going to stop this movement, right? It's like nothing's going to happen is going to stop this. In fact, it would be really bad to try. And so it's more about how do you take your expertise, how do you leverage your expertise into helping to usher it along, and usher it along on the right channels, in the right ways, putting in the right guardrails, putting in the right controls. And so there's a responsibility, especially within the security, among security professionals, is don't be the naysay, don't be the no guy, be the how can we make this work, and how, like be part of the folks ushering that in. Because if you're in that wave, you can control at least a portion. If it's for your team or for your enterprise or for whatever it may be, like lean into the control that you have, the expertise that you have, and bring that to the table, because it is moving fast enough. It's fluid, right? Like you can. It seems like MCP sort of like that thing sprung up overnight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's hope there, right? Like you have an MCP server, you can now I have a single place where all those tools live. I can control access in and out. Like that's great for an enterprise. Like there's great things that can happen, that can come of that. It's just we need smart people to do their jobs and lean in.
So this was fantastic. We've reached a part of the podcast now. We do this every time. We usually spend a lot of time on very serious questions, and then we have a fun question at the end. Usually it's a non-technology question, but this time I do have somewhat of a technology question for you. So we've been talking a lot about AI. We've been talking a lot about kind of the future and kind of the sci-fi AI will displace us. So if you had to guess of how AI will ultimately kill all humans, right? I know it's a little somber, but if you had to guess, what would your guess be? And the follow-up question, is there a movie that you think follows the storyline of how it'll actually happen?
Yeah. Wow, that's a fantastic question. I haven't really thought about how they would go about doing. Ultimately, I think how AI would do that. This is crazy. It's starvation. They're going to cut us off from our food supply. In a modern society, world around, we are so disconnected from our food supply. Just 100 years ago, right? Like people grew in their gardens, grew in their yards, grew in their, like a lot of people, had the means and the capacity to generate at least enough food for their family. That's pretty much gone, right? Like, and like, and I think there's probably been enough generations we wouldn't even know how. So you shut down transportation, you shut down commerce, you shut down the ability to move goods back and forth. Not only will I, not get my Amazon Prime shipments of new golf balls, but like food basically shuts down. That's scary to me. I haven't seen that in a movie yet, but if anybody's looking for a screenplay assistant writer, we could workshop it.
What would you call that movie? What would the title be?
Uh,
Might have to workshop it a little bit.
yeah, I'd probably have to workshop a little bit because honestly, it sounds like a pretty boring, slow grind. So we'd have to work it out. That's why most of the movies, right? Like you look at Matrix, right? That's the one that always sticks out to me. I think it's one of it just hit me at the right time of life, and it was a huge thing when it came out, and the first DVD most of us ever bought. So you look at like the Matrix, but like it didn't. I was even trying to think like how did they get to the point in the Matrix? I know they told the backstory, but it was basically, hey, we built robots and then they tried to kill us.
Yeah.
Like they just
Well,
went
there was
about
some
on,
kind of,
yeah,
and it always ends up in being some kind of robot and war, like if you think
yeah.
about Terminator, um, I always thought it's probably not going to be that
No, that's an
inconvenient.
inefficient way. It
Yeah,
takes too
it's
many
inefficient.
resources.
So I always thought that it would be a virus, right? Create a virus. The humans themselves will spread it. I don't have to worry about, as an AI, I don't have to worry about how do I spread it. The humans will do a good job of doing that, right? I just have to create something that is impossible to cure.
Yeah.
But based on what you just said, I just thought of another way. Just shut itself off. Not shut it off. Go dormant. Right.
Yeah.
So we are so reliant. If we
Just
rely
start
so
saying
much on
no.
AI, no. Like think about we get to a point where we're so reliant on AI and so reliant on just technology. It's an AI. It doesn't have a lifespan. It doesn't have to worry about I'm going to get old. Make yourself dormant for 100 years. Turn off all access to technology. Again, yeah, it'll be starvation, but it'll be other things too, like no access to medicine, no access to other people, right? Just shut yourself off, go dormant, and then wake up, 50, 100 years from now, 500 years from now, who cares, right?
Yeah.
And all humans are gone.
All you have to do
right?
is deal with a few doomsday preppers that made it through.
Yeah, you just gotta go track those guys down, and but otherwise you're good to go. This is a very very
That could
real.
be that could be a great movie, right? Hey, you're in society, everything's cool, high technology, we're super reliant, we got our watches and our glasses and all, and then it just goes black. Like it's not even, yeah, it's
Yeah,
the chaos that
I
ensue.
can't think of a good title, but that would also be somewhat boring if everything
Yeah.
just gets
The
shut
day the
down.
world went dark.
Yeah, yeah. The day
In a world
the AI shut itself
dependent
off.
on
Yeah.
AI.
Yeah. Agentic AI. Yeah. Justin, this was fantastic. This was better than I thought it would be, and I already had really, really high hopes for this episode. And yeah, this was absolutely fantastic. You are absolutely welcome back anytime. And
I appreciate
yeah,
it.
this was great. So
Yeah, had a blast. Yeah, appreciate the invite, and yeah, keep up the good work and the good fight, and keep getting the word out there, and we'll be okay. Like just be nice to your Alexa.
yeah,
You want to be
absolutely.
on the good side of the robot uprising.
Please and thank you.
Please and
at
thank
least
you.
At the very least, maybe we'll be the last ones to go.
That's right.
A
That's
lot
exactly
of pleases
right.
and thanks. All right, awesome. Thanks, Justin.
Sorry, thank you. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Smells Like Identity Hygiene. Smells Like Identity Hygiene is a production of Sphere Technology Solutions, and our producer is Matthew Quinn. Until next time.